Hello, everybody, and welcome to the music rating, ranking, and reviewing podcast that we like to call Music Meltdown, in which we rate, rank, and review an artist's discography, sort of musical topics, singles, albums, what have you. For this episode, we're actually going to be trying a different format, something that I found from another smaller music channel called the KMB Music Den, in which essentially how they call it is they rank records in real time. Essentially, there's two panelists, there's an artist discography, and they have to sort of come to a collective agreement by the end of the discussion upon the ranking and deal with something that they enjoy. For this first one, we may have bit off slightly more than we could chew, as with the 24 albums that we're covering of the Kinks, legendary 60s pop, hard rock, psychedelic band. They have 24 albums to their name, going from the 60s all the way to the 90s. And this is going to be interesting. I decided to bring over one of the two 60s freaks that I know, in Harvey. And yeah, I know he's a massive Kinks fan. I like the Kinks. They're good. They're good. I went through this discography whenever Tastes Like Music did, so I've listened to all of these records at least once. Most of them twice, though. I assume you're relatively, probably more familiar with this discography than I am.
Yeah, I've known all of the albums for a few years now, and I've listened to them a lot when our friends Taste Like Music covered them. So,
Alrighty. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and screen share just so that there's a proper visual off of the Topsters. And from here, I will give the first record, in which we're actually going to be doing this in a bit of a random order, just sort of to make it more interesting. And the first record that we are going to be talking about, going immediately to the top, is Low Budget, which this is a all right album. Bit of a weird one to start with, I'd say. Any initial thoughts on this one, or is this kind of
yeah, it is a bit of a weird one to start with. It's kind of the Kinks versions of Some Girls, but not as good.
it's not
Um,
even close. I know that you are pretty high on you like the Kinks more than the Stones, at least comparative to me. So
yeah,
it's like I don't know. This album, it's the one where they're kind of infusing a bit of that disco flair, doing a bit of, as you mentioned earlier, what the Stones were also doing at around this time. And well, just to be blunt, it's nowhere near as successful or as good.
it's a little choppy. Yeah,
Yeah, it's all right. It's a decent record. There's a couple songs that I liked. I believe my looking back at it, my favorite was definitely "Wish I Could Fly Like Superman," which I think is a genuinely pretty good song. But moving past that, I don't think either you or I are too high on this. Neither of us are like good old Sea of Tranquility, Pete Pardo gonna stick this
no,
number
no,
one.
it's not my number one favorite album by them. I do like Catch Me Now I'm Falling and a little bit of Emotion. I think those are the two songs that stand
Okay,
out, but it's
it's fine.
it's a good, it's all right, but in the grand scheme of, in the context of their discography, you can live without it.
Yeah, I'd probably agree about it. I have that one at 3 stars for what it's worth. So it's a decent record in my opinion, but nothing more.
Yeah, I'd say it around 3 and 3.5.
Gotcha. Following this one, not sure if you like this one more or not, but talking about Misfits next. Which,
Yeah, I do like this one more, not by a huge amount, but I think it's got some good tracks on it. I think the title track, which is the first track, is probably the best one on there. And then Rock and
I'd
Roll
agree with that.
Fantasy is good.
Yep.
Permanent Waves is good. There's a couple clunkers in there in the
Oh,
middle,
I
but
I'd argue this album probably has their two worst songs in my opinion, and it's not even really
yeah,
that close. Black Messiah and especially Out of the Wardrobe are just really horrible in my opinion. It's like the worst that this band gets to me. Uh,
yeah, not great songs.
yeah,
You can
I
kind of see what he was going for. I don't think he pulls it off well.
barely pulls off. I'll just let the cat out of the bag. Ray should not write about LGBT at all. I don't think he's good about it like ever, at least from what I've noticed. It's like an out of touch thing for me. But moving away from that, I agree with you. I like Misfits. I like a rock and roll fantasy. The other song that I liked a decent bit was Get Up. I thought that one was pretty good. For the most part, I wasn't crazy about the rest of this record though.
Yeah, I'm not. I think it's other than the songs we've mentioned. I think it's solidly pretty good throughout the whole way out, and then you get to one of those songs and there's a bit of a dip, but it
Yeah,
goes back up again until you reach the next one, dip up again. But I do like it more than Low Budget. I'd say it's 3.5 stars for me.
I'd probably put it below low budget. I have it at 2.5. My argument for having it below is I think it definitely has lower lows than low budget. That's kind of my stance on that. But I'm not going crazy to have it above or below. So if you want us to have it above, we can have it above. That's cool with me.
Well, I would want it above, but we won't go too crazy about it being too far ahead of Low Budget because same era,
Excuse me.
kind of similar quality, but I do like Misfits a good bit more.
Okay, we can put it above. That's cool with me. Now the next record, this is one that I know both you and I are way higher on than other people.
Yeah.
Schoolboys in Disgrace. I know you probably like it a bit more than me, so I'll just go first. I think that this is a solid record. Sort of preface, I actually kind of like the theatrical era. I think it's pretty fun, pretty campy. This is the end of that one, and you can definitely tell they were veering in the later hard rock direction, sort of arena rock, but it still has a bit of that jauntiness, a bit of that early 60s Kinks fun on it. I think School Days is a great song. I loved I'm in Disgrace. I think Headmaster's a bunch of fun. For me, this is easily the top of the three that we've talked about so far.
Yeah, I agree. I don't. Well, I feel like a lot of people are quick to lump it in with all the theatrical era, but really, there's I think a lot more that this album has to offer. It's got kind of like a power pop kind of edge to it in songs like
Yeah,
The Hardware, and obviously it's got kind of like a 50s influence, like First Time We Fall in Love, kind of a doo-woppy song. I think it's got tons of really good sort of musical ideas on it, and I actually like Jack the Idiot Dunce. I think it's fun.
I,
Um,
I get it. I get it.
and I think someone on Discord said it was Meatloaf trying to do the wall, and
That's right.
wow, that perfect. And that
It
they meant
really,
that as like an insult, but I'm like, yeah, Meatloaf should have done that, you know?
it maybe would have turned out as good as Bad Out of Hell. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I like Meatloaf, so
he's all right. I like Bad Out of Hell. It didn't really inspire me to check out anything else though, given that's what many people consider his apex.
but in terms of and okay, I'm going to be controversial. I liked it in terms of school rock opera albums relating to school. I like this more than The Wall, um,
I don't even like Pink
which
Floyd, and I think that that's crazy.
I know that you probably wouldn't think it's crazy, but other people will. People watching,
But, no,
but I do like
I
this
still think
album.
that that's wild, and
Oh,
I
do
don't even
you?
like Pink
Okay,
Floyd. The Wall is like my second favorite Pink Floyd album.
right.
I get it though. I get why some people don't get into it. It's a bit over the top for what it's worth.
Yeah, the thing is, I Pink Floyd. It's the very sort of self-serious, over the top,
Yep,
but I like the Kinks brand of over the top better, where it's more sort of fun and all over the place. So I do really
yeah,
like this album. I think it's consistently pretty good actually, and I'm
I'd agree.
kind of sad when I see it get shot on by certain people.
Oh yeah, I saw 2 stars, lower than 2 stars, all over the place, and I mean, it's firmly a good album. I have it at 3.5. Actually, I'm decently
I'd say
higher
it's
on the
like
Kinks list.
close to 4 stars to me. I'd say it's a pretty good album.
Yeah, I think it's like my 12 or 13 favorite on my list. We'll see how it falls for us. Following this, however, probably the biggest contention that I think you and I are going to have, it is Loba. I'll let you talk about this one first because you're going to be more positive. Let's just get
Yeah,
there.
so this is right in there. sort of mid to late classic era of just fantastic albums, the sort of albums that really made them legends. I think that you like this album,
I
but
I think that I respect it. I think that it's really good. I have it personally. It would still go to the top. I have it at a low 4 stars, but I have issues with the record. I do
okay,
have
so
issues.
yeah, I say we're not going to disagree that this is the highest one so far.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm my opinion of the album is pretty similar to pretty much everyone else. Strangers is probably Dave's, well, it's definitely Dave Davies' best song.
I
The
agree with that.
Contenders is great.
Yeah,
Denmark Street is great. I know you have your problems with Lola, but I think it's a
yeah,
catchy song. Get Back in Line is great. Top of the Pops. I'm just going to say
yeah.
all the songs are great. It's maybe
Oh,
a little
I will say one thing. I agree. Lola is catchy. I'd argue it's catchy to a fault.
okay,
However,
okay,
that's one of
okay.
those earworms that I just really can't stand. It grates on me a ton. But
But yeah, I would say this is a very strong 4.5 stars. It'll probably make my like top 20 in a very competitive year, 1970. Maybe a reason why it's not 5 stars. It's a little bit disjointed at certain points for me. It's kind of like a
yeah,
especially coming off Village Green and Arthur, which are like so all around consistent and well structured. It's kind of and it's a little more playing with a few more musical styles, but maybe if I'm just being nitpicky at a full album listen, I would rather listen to Village Green or Arthur. But yeah, I think this is a great album, and yeah, a lot of people have this as at their favorite, and I totally get it.
I will say some songs that you didn't point out that I really like. Ape Man, that's a classic. This Time Tomorrow is really interesting. I think that one's great. And my favorite on the
Yeah,
record is probably Top of the Pops. Just really fun. Uh, I know that we alluded to it, but just like the song Lola, it really irritates me. I think over time, at least to me, kind of comes across a little tone deaf. Like it was the I don't know if he did it before and I just didn't read it, but that was like the most overt that he was, writing about LGBT. And for me, it just simply hasn't aged well. I think it comes across kind of, like I said, tone deaf, a little ill-informed, I would say. But I mean, I get it has a good message, but it's almost one of those songs that are also too perfect in its execution, if that makes sense. Like it sounds brilliant. The hook is immaculately performed. It's a great instrumental. All of these things are so well performed, but it just irks me so much. It like be worse. You're too good. It's weird. I don't know. I agree. It's a really good record. I also probably agree that at points it feels a bit disjointed. It's never been like my favorite Kinks record. I think it's around 7 or 8 for me, but I do get why others love it. And I understand. It's probably their most hard rocking up to that point. And in that vein, if you're looking for a rock record by them, it's probably the second best that you'll get to, but I think that we'll disagree on that. So
well, you having it at 7 to 8, that's not as low as I thought you might have it. I have it at number 4,
okay,
so it's not too big of a difference.
yeah. Then again, I think that your number 4 is still like considerably higher
Yeah, that's also
than
true.
how I feel about the record. Moving next from here, we have Give the People What They Want, which I do not much care for this record. Um, I think that this is a pretty lame album, if I'm being brutally honest. I have it at a very low 2.5. Let's talk about it now. Shit, what's the name of the song? I'm blanking.
Art Lover.
Yep, you knew where I was getting at. Art Lover is genuinely like the worst song in the catalog. Just really uncomfortable, really gross. And I don't want to talk about it anymore because it's absolutely terrible. I almost get like a Loose Pretenders vibe on this album. Maybe that's just me, but it's like,
Well, Ray was dating Chrissy Hine at this
yep,
point,
yep,
and she does backing vocals on some of the tracks.
yep. But I just want all Chrissy Hine is my thing. I don't want Ray Davies, which This is probably contentious. I don't love either Ray or Dave as a singer. I think that they fit the band very well, but like as overall vocalists, I don't love either of them. And it's just like I'm hearing Pretenders, and I want Chrissy Hynde. I don't want Ray Davies, if that makes sense. I think Yo Yo is pretty good. I like Killer's Eyes a good bit. I don't really get Destroyer. I think it's fine. We'll get to this on State of Confusion. I also don't really get Come Dancing and also Walking Out a Thin Line. I don't get like their three biggest 80s songs. Like I think that they're fine, but we'll get there later. Ultimately, I think that this isn't a great record. I don't get how this is Pete Pardo's number three, but I think that you like it more than me, but still agree it's probably the weakest on here right now.
I might have it above Low Budget.
Okay.
Let's get out of the way. Art Lover is awful.
Yeah.
But I really do like the rest of the album. I think it's fun. Um, I think Around the Dial is maybe one of my favorite AC songs by them. I think it's really good. Killer's Eyes, like you said, was good. It's just kind of like really sort of new wave, kind of punkish, like you
Yeah.
said. Also, really Pretenders kind of songs. He was dating Chrissy Hynde at the time,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I think it's kind of fun and silly, which is I think an aspect I like of them. Obviously, Art Lover aside, I think all of the songs are really pretty good. The production on it isn't great, but I think the performances are also pretty good on this album as well. Like he's, I wouldn't call them great singers, but I do think they fit the kind of music a lot of the time. Would I would have this between Misfits and Low Budget.
Okay. For me, this would be at the bottom, but I do think I probably like my top songs on this record comparably to Low Budget, and I don't really care about any of their records after Sleepwalker, really, so it's fine. Next record, I have some opinions on Word of Mouth by the
Oh,
Kinks. For me,
well,
it's
you hate this one.
it grew on me ever so slightly, but for me, it is by far their worst record. Like for me, it's not even really that close. I think that this is, without a shadow of a doubt, the worst thing that this band ever made. For one thing, there isn't a single good song on it. Um, and the production is really terrible. It's really tacky, really lame 80s fluff a lot of the time, and just like nothing on it sticks out to me. The writing, it's like they lost all of their edge or their like fun energy, and they're just like churning out these really boring 80s synth pop with like a slight rock tinge on it. As well, this album art, we're not going to get into that, but this band has some bad album art. This might be their worst to me. It's just really dreadful. And people say "Walking on a Thin Line" is such a great song. It just sounds like every other '80s Kinks song to me. It's not that special. To me, this album is just like the apex of them trying to get another hit. And while they were getting hits, they were continuously getting worse and worse with the actual musicality of it. I've heard somebody mention Dave Davies' voice was getting worse going into the 80s. This is probably the worst it gets until you get to UK Jive. But to me, this record is really bad. I have this at a pretty low 2 stars. I think it is, without a shadow of a doubt, the worst thing that the band put out. But I know you like it a little bit more, so say your piece.
I wouldn't say I like this album. I definitely think it's a bit overboard to say it's their worst. I think it's got three good songs. To do it again, I do love Living on a Thin Line. I think I don't really see what you're saying is that it sounds like I think it sounds pretty different to the rest of the album and their sort of the sort of word to mouth to Phobia or UK Jive run. And I think Missing Persons is probably my favorite song on the album, which is kind of a slower ballad. Um, I'd say the production actually kind of gets worse
Oh, it
from
does.
here on out with Think Visual. This is it. The production isn't great, but it's passable. I don't hate this album. I don't dislike it. I wouldn't say I like it either. It's like a low 3 stars to me, which puts it at the worst so far. I'm sure well, obviously we both agree on that.
Yes,
So
I there was not a chance this is going to be bottom three by the end of this. There is not I am not at all shifting on that. To me, this is absolutely bottom tier. But I can see an argument for some records being worse. So we'll see. Next up, however, or do you have anything else to say on that one, really?
no, I think this is the album I kind of theirs that I kind of forget exists the most. I tend to when I go through it in my head, I just kind of go from state of confusion to think visual, and I was like, oh yeah, word of mouth
Yeah.
exists. So
That's kind of how I felt about it before I listened to it.
right.
And then I thought very poorly of it. Moving on from here, we have Preservation Act number 1, which looking at the list, I'd say above Misfits, below Schoolboys.
Um, I would have it above Schoolboys, but obviously it's inferior to Lola.
That's fine with me. Sweet Lady Genevieve is incredible. Probably their best song in the theatrical era. I think that's pretty high up there. Where Are They Now is a ton of fun. Money and Corruption works a lot. I liked Sitting in the Midday Sun. I think this album has like a really great sound to it. Personally, I love the sound of these theatrical era records. They're almost like subtly glammy at points, which you get a lot more of that on soap opera, but like on the first two, there's a tinge of it. And it just seems like this was a really strong way for them to adapt to the 70s, which, if you buy into it, I would agree with what I'm saying. If you don't buy into this theatrical style, well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. This is their entire sound now. But for me, there's still pretty good writing overall. There's still really good songs across it. I like this album. I give it a 3.5. It's good. I do think that this is the album in the theatrical period that people give the most credence to. After this is kind of when I think people feel they went overboard. But yeah, I think this is a good one.
Yeah, I'd say this is clearly more theatrical than anything they've done before, but I feel like sort of the attachment to the theatrical era and as well Preservation Act 2 kind of hampers it in people's minds a bit, but I do think it's a really good album. Obviously, like you said, Sweet Lady Genevieve is good. I think Cricket is really sort of lame and fun. Um, Where Are They Now is obviously good. Here Comes Flash. I think Daylight is also pretty good with those really sort of open chord sounds.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I'd say it's pretty consistent throughout as well. And I do really like the sound in it, like you said. I like the sound in all of the theatrical albums. I don't really, for me, it doesn't really go too overboard. Maybe a couple of times, but
yeah,
I definitely have a stronger opinion on the theatrical era than a lot of other people do. And I think this one is definitely my favorite of that sort of
hmm,
run from this album to Schoolboys in Disgrace.
interesting. I thought you were higher. I thought that Schoolboys was your favorite. Not a big deal. Moving up.
I think
Yeah,
Preservation, when we were listening through for TLM, I think that one was the one that kind of grew on me the most. It might be in my
okay.
top 10 now.
Ooh, nice. I don't think it quite makes mine, but it was spoiler for later on. I actually like Act Two a little bit more, but we'll get to that later. Next up, we have Kinda Kinks, their sophomore album, which not quite sure where you're gonna go, but for me, this goes in between Schoolboys in Disgrace and Misfits.
I would go in between Misfits and give the people what they
Ooh,
want, but I'm fine. I'm fine if with either. I think
okay.
pretty close in quality to their debut. I don't think it's a huge step up.
Yeah,
I don't really think it's a step down per se. I think it shows some sort of improved songwriting from the originals, like Tired of Waiting for You, and Nothing in the World Can Stop Me Worrying About That Girl, I think are both really good.
yeah,
Um, it's still kind of got that mid 60s British invasion kind of filler to it as well, with the dancing in the street cover, which isn't great. But I do think it's a good sort of step in a you can kind of see where the blueprints are kind of where they're going to go from here with their sort of classic run in the late 60s, early 70s.
yeah. I probably agree to everything that you just said. I would have it above Misfits. I just think of this as well as the debut, but we'll get into that later. They're just kind of solid records. Nothing really overtly crazy about them, but they're decently enjoyable for what it is. They're also short, which definitely helps them out. I think like if they were more like 40 minutes, I would have more an issue with it because I feel like they're kind of one
There'll be
note
more.
at points. But I mean, they're solid for what they are. My favorite song is probably "Look for Me, Baby" on this one, but past that, nothing totally crazy about this one. Moving up from here, well, really moving down, we have the soundtrack record Percy. Um, you have anything to say about Percy?
I like God's Children. I think that's a good song, and also the film. I haven't seen it, but it sounds absolutely bizarre.
I like the song "Just Friends" on it. Past that, it is just such a, for lack of a better term, just a worthless record in the discography. Like it
I
exists.
like how at the moment it looks like the guy on the preservation. Well, that's Ray, but on the Preservation Act One album, it looks like that's his body. I'm gonna
That
screenshot that.
that really does go to show all that there is to say about this one. It's just nothing on it's really good. It goes on for a little long, which I think is weird because it's only like 30 minutes, I believe. And it just like,
Yeah, I mean it's a soundtrack.
yeah,
A lot of big bands have it. It's not. I mean, I'll be fine listening to it, but
yeah.
yeah, I don't have much to say.
The only other thing that I have to comment on is the fact that they put an instrumental version of Lola on it. But why do that? You're
I
telling
think
me,
it's because it was part of the film, but yeah, it's a bit.
I
Yeah,
guess, but if you're releasing the soundtrack album, you're telling me you don't just have like an extra non-album single, but you have like 40 that you can just stick in
yeah,
there
they
as
have a
both.
ton.
Yeah. I'd say probably the bottom, although I like word of mouth less. I just feel like in comparison to everything else, this is probably the least integral to the catalog that we've talked about so far.
Yeah, I mean, I'm. We can both agree it's at least bottom two. I don't mind
Yeah.
whether it's the bottom or above word of mouth.
I'll stick it at the bottom just for simplicity's sake. Next album is going to be their final record, Phobia, which I'm not sure how you feel about this one, but I'll start it off by saying I was pretty pleasantly surprised by this, all things considered. It's not a great record. I feel like it could have been much better, but the issue is, for whatever reason, it's over 70 minutes long, which it just simply didn't need to be. If you trim this down to like 35, 40 minutes, you could have had a really strong record here. I think that this is the one time in which they were really able to utilize this really heavy arena rock, just sort of almost glam metal at point style to their advantage. I think Wall of Fire was really good. I think Drift Away is fun. Over the Edge is pretty enjoyable, and Scattered as well was great. I just feel like there's too much material across here. For me, I would actually probably have this above Kinda Kinks, which may sound wild, but I really like the highs on this record. I think are really strong. It just is a matter of being too long. So
Well, this is my least favorite of the ones that we've talked about so far. I don't think it's very good. I think I do like Scattered. I do like Hatred. I do like Close to the Wire and The Informer. I don't really like everything else. It's a bit, and like you said, the length really kind of crushes it. It's too long for what it is. There are some good songs, but they're kind of few and far in between. And like you said, there's just too much material.
yeah.
I don't think it's not bad, or I wouldn't even say poor, but 2.5 sounds more than fair from me.
I only have it at three. It's about middle of the pack for me. So
It's
for
in my
me,
bottom three, so
I would put this above Word of Mouth.
I would put this as my lowest so far. So
I mean, I'd be fine just sticking it above Percy, but I'm not happy about it.
no, it's fine. I think if you want it above word of mouth and I want it last, we can put it. We can go in between.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Moving next from here, this is culture shock to talk about this record now. Going to Village Green, Reservation Society.
Well, that's my number one. So
It's not my number one. It's actually my number five.
wow.
However, I do have it at 4.5 stars. I do think it's a great album, but I do think it's slightly overrated, I would say. For one thing, I don't think it needed. I like all of the songs on the record. I don't think they like needed to be 17 songs. I'd probably trim it down to like 14 if it were me. But I love the title track. Do you remember Walter's awesome picture book? Obviously great. Animal Farm is delightful. And then Wicked Annabella is probably my other like favorite of the ones here. I feel like my main struggle with this record is not it's not that the songs sound similar, but it's just like they're so short and there's so many of them that they kind of just blend for me at points, which is weird because they don't really sound similar. But it's like, I don't know. I love the sound of the record. It's a great album. It's just I think that they have done better. I'll let you gush about it for a moment now.
Yeah, because this is definitely my number one, 5 stars. It's probably in my top 50 albums of all time. I really do think it's perfect from start to finish. Like you said, I like how the songs are kind of short. They kind of come and go. They're kind of like quick snapshot songs, which is what I really love about the album. And obviously, all the songs are just amazing. Um, Wicked Annabella, that guitar on there really rules. Um, do you remember Waters? Just kind of great with that. It's sort of bounce to it. Picture Book is obviously that bass line. It's great. Um, Title track is great. They're sort of playing with all the different styles as well. Like they've got kind of like calypso on Monica. Um, that sort of jaunty bounce on All of My Friends Were There, which I think is just a really funny song, but also strangely touching. Yeah, I think it's just perfect all throughout. I think it's definitely their greatest achievement.
Okay. I think that I don't think it's going to end up number one, but it's definitely top three. So moving from here, definitely an interesting album to talk about.
Ooh.
Going to Think Visual, which I'll cut to the chase. This is a bad album. Like I have this at 2 stars. I don't think it's a very good album. However, I probably have more fun with it than something like Misfits or Give the People What They Want. Because I think that this is like people say the theatrical era is like really over the top and campy. I think that this is like the weirdest record in their catalog. It almost sounds like 1984 by Van Halen with how 80s it is and just like how over the top it is. I love the song Lost and Found. And while I can admit pretty much every other song on this thing is bad, it, it's got like a fun charm to it with how just like weird and wild it is in the production aspect. To clarify, if I was being objective, I'd probably say this is honestly probably the bottom. However, I have so much fun with it despite how bad it is. It's like a so bad it's good record for me. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, so their final three albums, Think Visual, UK Jive, and Phobia, those are my bottom three albums.
Yeah,
I think they do kind of fall off a cliff a bit in the after State of Confusion, I'd say, because Word of Mouth also wasn't great.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just the 80s-ness. I really can't. It's such a 1986 album as well. It's like Invisible Touch with all the drum machines
Yeah.
and
Well, to be fair, I like Invisible Touch. I think that's a good album. It's fun.
but yeah, it's just such a 1986 album. And I do not like. I mean, it's got some 1986 has some great albums, but a lot of them are lackluster. It's like, and this is like when you think of like a 1986 album by like an aging rock band, you, if you got like an AI to make it, it'll probably come up with something like this. So yeah, I don't really like this album at all. I don't like any of the last three at all, really. But I'm probably have it above Phobia.
I
No,
have
sorry, I have Phobia above this.
I'd probably put this above Word of Mouth because like I like Phobia, but if you're saying it's like the worst thing, like I think that this is probably I'm fine putting it here because I will admit it is a bad record. Like it's not good, but I mean
So why don't we move word of mouth between Phobia and Think Visual?
that's fine. Can do that. Yeah, but I definitely agree. Think Visual sucks, but it's like it's almost enjoyable in how much it sucks for me. So it's like that's how I feel about that album. It's the most fun I've had listening to something bad, I guess is the best way to put it. Next up we have an album called Soap Opera. I will cut to the chase here because this is definitely one that we disagree on. This is above looking at the list now, I'd put this above kind of Kinks. I think this is a good album. I like Soap Opera. So
It has grown on me in recent times. I wouldn't go as high on it as you in terms of where you put it on the list. I'd probably put it um, around where low budget is, I think. I do think that there's some really good stuff on there. It's really weird at points, which I do love, but
yeah,
sometimes it is a bit too focused on the story for me. I just kind of want to just cut to the chase and just have some good songs, which there are quite a few on there on here, but sometimes the voices are a bit distracting and annoying. It's a bit too it's so heavy-handed that it's a bit too much for even me. But I do like some of the songs on it, like Facing the Crowd and
yeah.
Everyone's a Star. So
Everybody's a Star is really good. I like Rush Hour Blues a good bit, and Ducks on the Wall. That's like the most wacky and weird it gets, and I think it's great.
yeah,
Like
I do like that song.
this is the most theatrical I'd say any of the theatrical albums get. Maybe Preservation Act 2, but we'll get to that one. Like I said, for me, I would have this a lot higher. I think I'd probably put it above Give the People What They Want if we're thinking in this area.
Yeah,
Okay. Like it's definitely the glammiest that they ever got on this record, and it's just so weird and fun to me. So now, next up, we're getting out of bad records because we just essentially did that for a while. What people think. Talking about one that would be number one for me currently. Talking about now, Muswell Hillbillies.
yeah, this is a great album. I think I'd probably put it at number three right now. Um, yeah, I think it's really good. It's sort of that sort of a lot of classic rock bands kind of have that sort of country rock album, and
Yeah,
I really do love their take on it. I think there's so many good songs on there, like Oklahoma Jail, Alcohol, Have a Cup of Tea, and the title track I think are really great. So I think it's a really
absolutely.
solid album.
Yeah, this is actually my second favorite by them. Either second or third.
Well, I'm
Um,
fine with having it above Lola.
Yep, I would definitely put it above Lola. I just think just track for track, I think that's awesome. I love 20th Century Man. Skin and Bone is great.
Oh yeah,
The title track, like we mentioned, Oklahoma, USA. Have the People Coming great. Just for me, track for track, this is one of their most consistent efforts. And people say it's like their country record, but it really isn't that country overall. Like it's almost
it's
more
mainly
folk.
Americana and sort of
Yeah,
roots rock, would you say?
definitely. Yeah, I would agree with that. I
Yeah, I
think
wouldn't
it's
have it above Lola, but I think I'm happy with it. I think that's a nice balance between what we both think.
yeah. I'm not sure how you feel about this next one either. But next up we have Sleepwalker, which this was an album that on my first listen I didn't really get much at all. I thought it was admittedly pretty overrated because I'd seen some people have this like top five, and to me that was crazy because I thought it this was whenever I first went through the catalog. Um, this was kind of when they fell off, when they stopped being really that interesting for me. But upon a re-listen, I thought it was very strong. For me, I would put this above Lola. Looking at the list,
I really like this album. I actually like it
okay.
more than any of the theatrical albums, and that's someone who
I
really
agree.
likes the theatrical stuff. I think the first two tracks are some of the best they've had in years. Life on the Road and
Yep, agreed.
Mr. Big Man and Stormy Sky is great. Bravo is great. Those are, I think, four of their best songs. Actually, I think it's a sort of a great sort of return to rock music, which I think at this point was kind of a welcome return, even though I do like the theatrical stuff a good bit. I wouldn't go ahead of Lola. I would go ahead of Preservation Act 1, below
Okay.
Lola.
I think it closes really strong on Life Goes On as well. Also, that's fine.
Yeah.
Only
And really,
songs that
there's not a less than good song in the album.
one that I liked on my first listen that I didn't really care for as much on a re-listen was Jukebox Music, which I know people love. For me, that's kind of when it gets a bit more generic, a bit more Misfits like, is kind of what I would say. Because I feel like this
Yeah, it's
album
very arena,
strikes
but
it
it's
strikes a
very
really
sort
good
of arena rock.
balance. Yeah, it
But I
strikes a
do
good
think it's a very good
balance.
album.
Absolutely, I'd agree. I think it's my 7 or 8, so I think it's really good. I have a feeling this one's going pretty low. Next up, we have UK Jive, which this is one of the ones that's on YouTube, so I wasn't able to listen to it on streaming. So I don't really know the individual songs very well, but I don't hate this album. I have it at 2.5. I think it's okay. But for me, once again, probably above Word of Mouth, below Phobia. I will say though, I'm blanking on the title. I think it's called Dear Margaret. That song was just horrible. I think that was a Dave Sun number, and
Yeah.
definitely like a bottom 5 for them. It's really really terrible. There was some decent stuff towards the beginning, but for the most part, it's just kind of decent. I think everything that they did on this record, they would do much better on Phobia. Is kind of what I perceive about it.
Yeah, I do like Phobia more than this one. This one's my least favorite, actually. I think a
Okay.
lot of it just kind of relies on it's just sort of very basic, just sort of a guitar riff and just a band just shouting the
Yeah,
title at you like aggravation. It's just
it's their ACDC album.
yeah, yeah. It's just like to a T. It's just every song is just well, not every song, but a lot of the songs are just the band just kind of screaming the chorus at you, which is not very interesting. I do like the song Looney Balloon a good bit. Um the title track is kind of fun, I guess, but the production's horrible. Um and yeah, Dear Margaret, awful. And I think it bookends poorly with Aggravation and Dear Margaret.
Yeah,
I know there's some bonus tracks, but I don't really include those. I think it
same.
ends on Dear Margaret for me. So yeah, it bookends horribly. Some of the stuff's in the middle's fine, but not great. I don't think it's a good album. But
Okay.
and so I think we'll agree it's bottom 4 at least.
I'm honestly fine with this going to the bottom.
Okay.
Like I wouldn't have it there personally, but it's like I don't feel strongly enough about it to really care.
Yeah.
This next album I do feel strongly enough about, talking about something else, which it's not quite my number one. This is my number two. For me, this album is really great. Waterloo Sunset for me by a long shot is their best song. I think David Watts is pretty incredible. And really just track for track for me, I think that this is it. I like this more than Village Green by a fair bit, actually, which I know you don't, but I think that you can kind of see why. I think that it has less songs. I think that the songs on this are a bit more concise. Like End of the Season's great, Tin Soldier Man. And it's not quite as strong sounding of a record either, I would say, but I think that it has such a unified sound, but it's able to do so much within these individual songs. And for me, these are probably the best vocals that Ray put down. This or Arthur. For me, I think track for track, this is probably better than Village Green. For me, this easily slots to number one. But if you would rather it go to number two, because I know you're pretty high on this as well, that's fine.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. It's a great album. I think all the tracks are really good. Waterloo Sunset is obviously great. Um, and yeah, this is kind of really when they become, I guess, face to face as well, but sort of really where they become the Kinks that most people love. I won't put it above Village Green. I don't think I'll. Actually, there's one album. You can probably guess which one it is that I'll be willing to. That's the only other one I'd be willing to
Well,
put
let
at
me know
number
what number
one.
one's going to be.
Yeah, I'm sort of accepted that already. That Village Green is probably going to drop to number 2. But
That's
yeah,
fine.
something else is near perfect album. So
Yeah.
second for now.
All right. After this, This is an interesting one to follow up with. We are doing Preservation Act 2.
I actually like this album the more I listen to it.
I would put this personally above Act 1, which I know you won't go that far, but I like this album a fair bit. I think that it is surprisingly fun. It surprisingly goes by pretty quickly for a double album. And the main issue with this one, I think, is like the interlude, the announcements. But brought up to me, they're short. They don't really do anything for the record. I just cut all of them because I think that they're just kind of pointless. But I think that the actual songs on this record are really strong. A weird one that I want to point out that I actually like because of how weird it is I like Flash's Dream, which I know some people on the server were talking about. I think that song is just so ridiculous, so bonkers. I think it's a lot of fun. Money Talks is really good. He's Evil is another one of those. It's almost like Disney esque and just how over the top and ridiculous it is. Nobody Gives is a bunch of fun, and I think it closes pretty well with Salvation Road. For me, this is a pretty good record. It's too long. I definitely would have condensed it down to a single record or just like gone halfway between a single and a double if you could have. But I think this album's a blast. It's weird, it's bizarre, but I think it works at what it's going for. I only have
Yeah,
it three and a
I
half.
like this album the more I listen to it. I wasn't too keen on it at first, but
Yeah,
it's really grown on me sort of over time. I think it's a ton of fun. It's absolutely bonkers at certain points, but
yeah.
that's what makes it really great. I wouldn't say it's as good as Act One. I would be happy sort of lumping it in, sort of. It can actually. I'll let you decide whether it goes above. Oh, I'd assume you would put it above Schoolboys in Disgrace.
I put it just below School.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I do actually really like it a lot now. So
We're gonna get some awkward looks for that one, I can tell you that much. But
yeah,
we'll see. Next up, we got State of Confusion, which as I alluded to earlier, I don't really like Come Dancing very much. I never really got that song. I think it's okay. But I mean, it is what it is. I do think that there is some decent stuff on here. Um, for example, I enjoy uh, this record. I like the title track a good bit. I think Definite Maybe is pretty good. Not quite as good as the Oasis record, but it's solid. Property, it's pretty good, and I really like Don't Forget to Dance. I think this is a solid record. I don't love the production on it. It's definitely before the later ones, it's their most overtly 80s up to this point. And not really the 80s that I like. It's maybe a bit too much into the overly quirky new wave, which I tend to like, but I don't think that it works very well for this record. I probably have it for me above Phobia, above Word of Mouth. But
I would.
no, I'd probably put it above, give the people what they want. I forget that this one's higher than these two.
Yeah, I would probably put it. Yeah, around there seems fair. I do like this album. It's another one that I kind not as much as Preservation Act 2, but one that I like more and more I listen to it.
Yeah,
I think Come Dancing is great. I don't get what you're saying.
it's
Um,
fine.
I think Young Conservatives is really fun. The song, I mean, um,
I agree. I think that one's fun, but it's kind of one of those that it borders a bit on annoying for me. Although I do like it.
yeah, I can kind of see some of what I was saying about UK Jive in that a lot of it is just kind of like the band just kind of shouting the chorus at you, but
Yeah,
it does happen quite a bit too much. But I'd say where it is now on the chart, I think is fine.
yeah. Say Confusion is like their Back in Black, while UK Jive is their like ball breaker.
Yeah,
Yeah. Moving next from here, we have the debut album, Kinks. I think I'm. Do you want to put this above or below kind of Kinks? Because I think that that's
I'd put
kind
it
of where
just
it goes.
below.
I would agree with that. I think this one has
Okay.
some good stuff though. I think Beautiful Delilah is really good. I just can't go to sleep. Bald Headed Woman and their version of Stop Your Sobbing. I didn't bring up You Really Got Me because that's another one. I like You Really Got Me. Like I really don't get why people have it in their like top 10 as like their favorite Kinks song. It's good, but I mean, I don't really get it. Maybe it's because I knew the Van Halen version more and I'm wanting Eddie, which I know you definitely don't. But it's like I've always preferred that version by a fair bit. So
Yeah, I don't really like the Van Halen version. I think it's the the sort of I think sort of the iconic stature of the song is, what kind of puts it above the edge for people. I do really like that, but I think, yeah, there's definitely other good stuff on here as well, like Stop Your Sobbing and Beautiful Delilah, like you were saying. So yeah, I'm happy with where it is.
so this next record, it's going to have an asterisk by it. Everybody's in showbiz. So how do we want to rank this? Are we rating it with or without the live?
I'm fine with either.
Because with it, it goes here. Without it, it goes here. So it doesn't matter to me. I think that this record's great. I like it more than Lola by a fair bit. I think that the entire studio side is just incredible. Celluloid Heroes is the big one, but look a little on the sunny side is great. You don't know my name is awesome. I think Hot Potatoes is like really weird, but it's so fun. Here Comes the Another Day is awesome. Same with Maximum Consumption. For me, just that entire studio side is just great. And the live side kind of sucks. Like it's fine. It's listenable. Top of the Pops,
Yeah, I
pretty
would
good.
put
Same
it.
with Holiday.
I would put it below Lola, but above Sleepwalker.
That's fine.
But Celluloid Heroes is my favorite Kink song. I think it's absolutely great. Um, Sitting in My Hotel is nearly as good.
Yep.
Hot Potatoes, like you said, is really fun. You Don't Know My Name is also great. So the live side, take it or leave it. But I think where it's at is really fair. I think it's really strong.
Yep. Next record is going to be Kinks Controversy, which I think of this one you're going to have a lot higher than me. For me, this goes just above kind of Kinks. I don't quite get the love for this record. I think it's a step in the right direction, but I still do think that they definitely had room to grow at this point. At least that's my take on it. I think it's good.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
think it's
like,
kind of a huge step up actually from kind of Kinks, but then they'll do another huge step up with Face to Face.
oh, yeah, it's a
So
massive step up from Controversy to face, I would
I
say.
would put it um I put it above Preservation Act 2.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I think mm, I'll probably put it above Schoolboys as well, actually. I'll let you decide.
I have it below both, so I'll leave it in the middle for now.
Okay.
Now, interesting that we have these next two because we're ending it out with some of the bigger ones of the 60s. Next up, we have Face to Face, which is an album that definitely grew on me with a re listen. I actually would put this right below where it is right now. I'd put it below Muswell Hillbillies, but in my list, it goes right above Village Green. I think this is a really strong record, front to back. You know me,
Okay.
I don't really like the 14 track 60s formula. I think that it just has too much material there, but I think every song on this one really works. They're all really strong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the first record where Dave had some songs as well? Or
No, so he wrote I'm Free on Kink Controversy.
okay.
And he also sings songs. He sings about half the songs on the debut.
Oh, interesting. Didn't realize. Pretty similar early on. But I think that this is when he starts sort of breaking into his own, and Ray, of course, is still just the mad genius behind everything. Just track for track, I think that it's incredibly strong, and I think it's great for what it is. It definitely slot into my top five for '66. Probably below Pet Sounds, definitely below Aftermath, but really good. For me, it probably goes below Muswell Hillbillies. Just looking at it.
I think that looks good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a great album. I think like all of those albums except for Percy in that sort of classic era. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I love Party Line. I love Sunny Afternoon is kind of an iconic song in this country, actually. It's in tons of
That makes
adverts.
sense.
Dandy is really great. Rainy House, House in the Country, Rainy Day in June, Holiday on Wakaki, I think is really great. It's like sort of all these kind of, it's kind of like Village Green. It's like these kind of quick snapshots of life, which I think is great. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely in my top five for 66. So I'm
Yeah.
happy with where that is.
Now let's talk about the best one for us. Talking about who is this guy? Arthur. For me, this is my favorite Kinks album. Just overtakes something else. This record is great, in my opinion. I top it 4.5 stars for the Kinks. 60 is not really my zone. I think Arthur is definitely a great record. Just Victoria alone would get into the top one, but and then it just filled with so many other just absolutely incredible songs, just front to back. For me, just like Victoria, Some Other Sun, Driving, Brainwashing, Shangri-La, title track. For me, it's 12 songs. It's nice and concise. All of them are well developed. They all flow into each other brilliantly. And I just think that it's their best written record as well, and probably their best flowing. For me, just everything that the Kinks were doing up to this point, I think this is the album in which it got perfected, and it wouldn't quite get matched again, although Muswell Hillbillies comes very close. Our top five is my top five. I give all five of these 4.5 stars, slightly different order, but I'm really happy that this is the top five because I think you and I probably agree this is the best. Maybe Lola you would slip in there instead of Muswell Hillbillies, but these are all great records, regardless.
Yeah,
So
Arthur is 5 stars for me. I think it's great. It's my second favorite. It's only a bit behind Village Green.
yeah,
Village Green is just kind of the one I have more of a connection with in my music journey, but there's no denying that Arthur is absolutely amazing. I think everything you said is right. Some Mother's Son is a song I don't think you mentioned that I think is incredible.
yeah.
Um, Shangri-La is obviously great. Yeah, I'm definitely happy with this being number one.
I will say Shangri-La doesn't quite touch the ELO song, but I mean,
It's
but
I
they're
kind of
fine.
like them both the same amount.
That's fair. So yeah, this is our ending results on the Kinks. I don't think that we did anything too crazy.
No, I think
Um,
it's a pretty solid list.
I'd say maybe we have Preservation Act One and Schoolboys a bit too high. We definitely were a bit lower on the main theatrical era as opposed to some others, but I mean, it is what it is. Other people should just start liking it more. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty content with this. It's not like I said, this is my top five in the top five. I think actually the entire top eight is my top eight. So I mean,
Yeah, I think and I kind of think if you like if you gave both of our overall lists and took an average, I'd say it
yeah,
looked pretty similar to this actually.
probably because yeah, and UK Drive is my fourth from the bottom. So I think probably Think Visual would actually flow to the bottom. But I
It'll be
think
close.
yeah, I'll send you my actual list after we're done with this. But
Okay.
yeah, this was the Kinks. I like this band a good bit. I really enjoy them. They aren't quite like one of my favorites, like some people have them, but I do get it why they would be others. Um, it's a pretty damn solid discography, and if you're into the '60s pop style, obviously give it a spin. I'd still, for me at least, they're probably my least favorite of the big four, even though I like five Kinks albums more than any Who record. But it's just like the Who are more consistent for me, so it is what it is. Because yeah, I don't know. I genuinely dislike three of these records, which is kind of where that equals out, I suppose. I don't know. I know that you have them number two in that
Yeah,
regard,
that would be
though.
number
So
two for me.
yeah, well, alrighty. So a decent bit of fun. Hoping to try and do this again sometime with a different artist. I'm thinking potentially doing it with Talking Heads as well. I'm considering doing this with Husker Du. With that being said, though, this was our collective ranking of the Kinks discography. Really hope that you enjoyed, and you have a great one. Bye.